Tonight we are visiting a high walkway, threaded through an ancient forest, where the air itself seems braided with leaves, light, and the quiet routines of treetop lives. We'll wander from platform to platform as dusk settles, meeting the small citizens of the Canopy, listening as birds, insects, monkeys, and lemurs turn the pages of their evening. The walkway begins at the buttressed foot of a giant tree, and as you step onto the boards, the world rises with you, floor by floor, into green. Nets of vines hang like soft curtains, and the last sunlight pours through them in stripes and coins, warm as tea on skin. The planks have the polished feel that comes from years of patient footsteps, a sheen rubbed into them by many gentle nights like this one. Far below, leaves shuffle faintly, like someone folding a blanket, and somewhere water moves over stones with a sound that remembers rain. Above, a sliver of moon is already practicing its glow, silvering the edges of 1,000 leaves. The air smells of sap and cool bark, touched with something citrusy from crushed lichen. Every so often, a seed spirals down with a tiny hush, snagging a strand of spider silk and pausing mid-fall, as if undecided. The canopy opens ahead like a green harbor at high tide, calm and accepting. It feels simple to float here, buoyed by branches. At the first platform, a pair of tanagers gathers at a shallow bowl where dew has collected in the cradle of a bromeliad. Their feathers look like paint that never learned to dry, scarlet and black, a touch of ember near the throat. They hop with perfect politeness, taking turns to sip, then lift their heads and tremble their wings as if applauding the water. A breeze, weak as a sigh, passes through and ruffles their backs, and they lean into it with closed eyes, a little ceremony of weather. Tiny winged ants drift past like punctuation marks, tilting and correcting as they read the air. One tanager finds a soft grub and tampers it against the leaf until it goes still, then swallows, throat bobbing like a valve. A single note escapes afterward, surprised at its own beauty, and hangs in the leaves until the leaves remember how to hold it. You can feel the platform answer with a whisper in its ropes, the forest's low hum braiding with the birds' quick music. This is what a neighborhood sounds like when everyone knows one another. A lemur emerges along a branch with the leisurely certainty of a ferryman. the ring of its tail becoming 10 more rings in the mind. Its eyes, cupped in cinnamon fur, collect light as carefully as hands catching snow. One paw tests the lichen's slick bark and finds the old familiar purchase. Then the rest follows, fur brushing seed pods that clack softly like shells. It pauses to nose a spray of orchids, not for food perhaps, but for habit and pleasure, the way someone might pause by a window to admire rain. Below, a second lemur mirrors the motion on a shadow branch, as if the tree were lined with quiet glass. Between them runs a ladder of murmurs, the squeak of a joint, the breathy huff of greeting, the faint scuff of fur against a knot. When they leap, it is without drama. A small, private continent, migrating a few inches through night. The tail, that excellent flag, sails last and lands with quiet authority. On the next branch they share a fig and blink slowly, cheeks full of small moons. Monkeys move in the upper aisles like a family late for supper, and somehow unhurried. They carry the day with them in crumbs of pollen caught in their wrists, in the sun-warm smell of their shoulders. One, the lightest youngster, tests the bounce of a liana and lets out a sound like a wooden spoon tapping a glass. The elders answer without looking over, a rumbling reassurance that says the night is ordinary and safe. The youngster practices a somersault on air and lands in a sit that seems surprised to find itself sitting. He rubs a leaf over his forearms, as though shining shoes before a dance. Another spreads her fingers against the palm of a great leaf and compares sizes, hand to leaf, leaf to hand. Both quietly pleased by the match. Their silhouettes cross and recross the moonlit gaps, shadows threading shadows. When they settle, the crowding green makes a long hammock out of branches, and the troop rocks itself with almost nothing at all. In the high corridors, insects begin writing evening in a dozen alphabets. A moth the size of a small paper boat arrives and folds itself on a trunk, becoming bark that remembers wings. Stick insects set their careful time metronomes against the rail, each step placed like a bead on a string. A beetle trundles by as if pushing a little memory in front of it, polished and certain. The whir of its wing covers like a distant fan. Fireflies blink with civic cordiality. On, off, on. A message delivered and received, delivered and received again. Somewhere spidery, the loom begins, a lattice thrown between twig and twig, gleaming where a stray moon thread catches. The spider steps its way across the geometry with the deliberation of a violinist tuning, then waits in the center where night funnels like a soft trumpet. Things land and leave in a complicated kindness, the web sagging and recovering, a heartbeat mapped in wool-thin lines. The air thrums like someone humming behind a door. You pause where the walkway bows gently between trees, and the entire forest breathes in soft paragraphs. Orchids cling to bark like notes on a staff, their petals spelling a melody that even the wind seems to read. Bromeliads hold ponds in their centers, each a sky for small creatures with their own calendar and holidays. High-hung ferns let their fronds trail, combing the air, and the air flows back smoother. Somewhere a lizard's foot rattles a shower of dry moss, and the moss falls in slow motion and then remembers speed. A fruit drops with the sound of a fingertip on a drum, followed by the patient commentary of leaves settling around it. The wood of the walkway holds the day's warmth the way a book holds a reader's place. A sense of being held rises from below, from the clean net of roots and the old stubborn kindness of trunks. The forest feels as if it is thinking, not in words, but in a sweetness of weight and light. A pair of hornbills cross the gap between crowns, their beaks like carved crescent moons, carried end to end. Wing beats whoomp in slow, heroic strokes, and in the pause between strokes, they hang like coins, tossed and refusing to fall. Their calls arrive as hollow knockings, the architecture of sound echoed inside the great cask above the bill. On a high limb, one tucks a fig neatly back into the curve of its tongue, and the other watches with the tolerant pride of a partner who has seen this trick before. A small wind rocks them both and tilts the sprayed leaves so they look like scales on some enormous green fish. They preen in alternating motions, beak combing feather, feather repairing sky, the patience of grooming becoming a kind of lamp. When they lift again, air seems stitched behind them in invisible thread. The branch they leave keeps swaying for a time, and then remembers stillness. The fig tree settles its fruit like a choir arranging robes. On the next platform, the rope handrail wears a sleeve of moss so soft it feels invented. Ants keep a narrow highway across it, traffic lane bright with purpose, carrying half-lantern crumbs and fragrant secrets. Now and then two stop and tap their antennae together in a brisk, friendly exchange that looks like dancers touching fingertips. A mantis, lithe as a folded letter, prays without haste, turning its small triangular attention toward a patch of open air. The air answers by sending nothing at all, which is exactly the right thing. Somewhere behind, a cicada opens its instrument case and fills the canopy with a smooth electric note that thickens and thins without breaking. The note becomes a lacquer over everything, a gloss that deepens greens into night emerald and browns into cocoa. You can feel the frequencies soften your shoulders the way warm water softens cloth. When the cicada closes the case, the silence winks, grateful and new. Far out, where two trees lean toward one another like old friends swapping hats, a troop of squirrel monkeys appears and vanishes, appears and vanishes. They carry their tails like questions that already know the answers. One stops to peel a strip of lichen and sniff it with a seriousness that would suit a scholar. Another, solemnly chewing, offers a flower to no one in particular, and seems pleased when no one in particular accepts it. When they leap, it looks less like flying than like remembering how to be where they already intend to be. Leaves applaud very quietly, a sound like polite rain. A shack of seed pods follows them, bright as beads clinking in a pocket. Then, as if a bell has rung in a room you cannot see, the troop pours away along a vine and leaves behind their warm after-image. The branch they vacated eases upward with a relieved smile. Night burnishes. The moon shoulders itself deeper between fronds, and the sky cools to a very patient blue. Owls take the watch like librarians at closing, quiet and precise, their faces round with attention. One moves without moving, a leaf shaking where air has been persuaded to forget itself. And then those soft wing edges pass over your hair and are gone. Frogs begin to syllable the understory, each offering a small stamped coin of sound to the dish of the evening. Somewhere fruit bats unpeg themselves and pour into the night like tea, steeping the darkness with the faint musk of guava. The walkway's ropes creak now and then, with the voice of an old ship deciding the sea is calm enough for stories. A long thread of cloud lifts from the river and catches on the canopy, pearl drifting through leaves, then thinning like breath on glass. Even the stars look cushioned. A family of flying squirrels glides from a lanterned trunk, each a pouch of marvel stitched with silver. They push off with a soft pop, spread the membrane that is their deciding, and become kites holding their own wind. Their paths curve gently, bright little commas editing the woods into a kinder sentence. They land with a whisper that finds the exact pocket of bark meant for it, nose to nose for a moment, curious and calm. One tugs at a tuft of moss, tests it, and tucks it into a niche as if furnishing a house. Another hangs upside down to inspect the underleaf world, where veins are rivers and a single drop is a lake. Their eyes mirror the moon and return it more generous, as if eyes had a way of polishing light. When they go, they do not seem to leave. They rephrase distance, and distance agrees. By the tallest platform, a fig has split open, and beetles have found it by the grammar of scent. Inside, the fruit runs to velvet and syrup, and the beetles wade like careful horses in a shallow autumn stream. Their backs shine darkly, the color of evenings that were good in a way you did not have to explain. A gecko, in stockings of soft dusk, pads along the rail and pauses, listening with toes. The adhesive miracles in its feet are quiet braggers, each hair-thin spatula lifting and placing like a tutored cloud. It licks an eyelid with its pink paper tongue, checking the moon is still where it should be. Somewhere, very near, a leaf litter of whispers tells of a moth choosing which star to trust for a minute. A small branch makes a soft, subtracting sound, and night folds one more crease into itself. You can feel the whole forest settling, leaf by leaf, into the preferred shape of rest. Closer to the riverside, vines twist into staircases that only birds can read. A toucan perches, beak like a sunrise someone forgot to put away, and tilts its head as though listening to a pocket watch. Across from it, a shy nightjar nearly vanishes against a log. Its pattern, the patient arithmetic of bark and shadow. Fireflies begin their practiced choreography, the low canopy blinking in measured kindness, on and off, as if to show how time works. A soft rain begins far away, and then is here. Small coins tossed upward that fall down grateful. The smell of leaf and rain and cool mineral joins in a chord you could lean against. Drops gather on the rail and string themselves from knot to knot, like morning beads misplaced and recovered at night. Everything wears a gloss for a while, and then the forest drinks carefully, like someone savoring the last sweet sip. The rain passes not because it must, but because the story has reached a comma. Hours turn kindly. The lemurs return to a favorite branch and fold themselves into shapes that know about sleep. The monkeys have tucked into the deep green rooms and have nothing left to prove to the night. The cicada's instrument case is closed again, and even the frogs speak less, their vowels lengthening into yawn-shaped notes. The walkway rests with you on it, a quiet spine, threaded between trees that have become careful lungs. A last breeze counts the leaves like prayer beads, and then stops counting, satisfied. The moon lays a bookmark on the page of the river, bright and slim. Somewhere, a seed chooses this moment to let go, and the letting go makes a sound so soft it might be the forest thinking, yes. The yes spreads, leaf to leaf, until every branch knows morning will come. Just before dawn, the sky thins and turns the color of cooled ash brushed with peach. Birds rehearse softly, less a chorus than a clearing of throats, a few notes lifted like small curtains. The first full song comes from somewhere you cannot see, so it seems to come from everywhere, and the song tells you what the light will do. One by one, flowers open a degree. One by one, insects discover they are awake. The forest exhales the night and inhales the day, and the exchange is sweet and exact. Monkeys stir and stretch, each limb a neatly folded map opening to known roads. A lemur blinks, makes a round, astonished face at the pale east, and smiles in the way lemurs do, which is with their entire body. The walkway brightens to its old honey color, familiar and new at once. And the canopy, which has held you all night, lifts you gently into morning, like a palm bearing a cup of quiet.